Welcome, everyone, to another edition of Stepping Up to the Plate. So glad you could join us. I'm your host, Michael Vega, and look who the cat dragged in all the way from Maui, Hawaii. None other than my main man, Aloha Al Prezzuti. Al, mahalo, my friend. Thanks for coming. Thanks for coming back to me.
A long flight, but it's worth it.
I know how tempted you were to stay over there.
Well,
but I mean, it's
an expensive island. I don't know if I could have stayed there. To be honest.
No doubt, no doubt.
It's quite a. We went up to Lahaina.
Yeah.
You can't go in Lahaina, but we went by it because my daughter lives up on the top of where Lahaina is, and it's coming back. It's starting to get a little green.
Yeah, good.
But they're cleaning it out, and but the other parts are like Kihei and Wailea and up in Kula and stuff like that.
They were largely unaffected by the.
Well, Kula was affected because if you look at how it is Lahaina's here on the water.
Right.
Kula would be here.
Yeah.
And Kapalua is above
Lahaina. Yeah.
So they're all relatively close, and if the wind goes the right way, I mean, you can get in trouble.
Yeah.
But Kula had some issues. That's where Oprah lives, up by the volcano up there.
Yeah.
But anyways, it was nice.
Good,
I got a chance to relax a little and walk in the 80-degree weather. So.
Thanks, Al, for rubbing. Hey, Al, we had 80-degree weather here too.
That's what I heard.
You could have teed it up over here, but it's so good to hear that there's maybe a little sense of normalcy returning to that island. A beloved place, a very spiritual place. I mean, just an unbelievably beautiful place on this planet. I've been there several times, and it hurt my heart to see what those people suffered, but it also did my heart good to see how they're resilient and how they're bouncing back, and how they're rallying around each other. And everyone, don't forget those people. They still have a long ways to go.
Yeah.
They're
actually going through some interesting things. I know that, not to go off on a tangent here, but. Yeah. What they're doing is they're going to people who own condos in kind of like the Kihei and Wailea area and telling them that they should allow some of the people who lost their homes to live until they have a place to live.
Right.
And there's getting resistance from some of the owners.
Okay.
Who are saying, I rent. And I'll lose the rent on that. So there's a controversy there. If you talk to people from Lahaina, they're saying, oh, these people are selfish. If you talk to the people down there, they say, listen, I lived my whole life to get a place, and I rent it, and that's the only income I have. So there's a little clash going on there. But anyways,
yeah.
The island itself is doing well.
Largely intact, yeah. That's good to hear. Good to hear. Well, Al, since you were away, so much has happened here in Boston, world of sports with, both trading deadlines coming through, Red Sox ramping up down in spring training, the Dodgers fortifying their ranks, getting every high-price free agent there is in the market. How they're doing that, we don't know, especially here in Boston where we're supposed to be a big market team. But more and more we're looking at like a small market, team with small market, expectations. And but don't get me started on that. And NFL free agency out. Unbelievable. Why don't we launch into that, since there's a lot of news going on with all these teams, particularly with the Patriots. And Al, I think I'm a little bit encouraged by what I'm seeing from the Patriots. And I'll tell you why. They've been able to go and assemble a staff. We wondered who's going to be at the front of this organization in terms of acquisition of talent, identification of and evaluation of young talent, which had been, I think, a shortfall of this team, and especially in the latter parts of the Belichick era. And the thing that I like, they went out and got Jacoby Brissett, brought him back, kept Kendrick Bourne, all right? You kept Michael Onwenu, you re-signed Josh Uche. Those are guys that I think maybe are bought into Mayo, right? But Al, what that does is this opens up the door to not necessarily have to rely upon getting a quarterback at the top of the draft. They can be found later, and I'll tell you who I'm thinking about. But here's a guy I want them to target with a laser-sighted focus on the draft. Marvin Harrison Jr.
Yeah, well,
get that kid in the.
Everybody's talking about that. But
get him first and foremost, and then you know who you get as your quarterback later, your quarterback of the future, J.J. McCarthy from Michigan.
Yeah, well, I look at it this way with Harrison. I would say, if the Patriots could get somebody other than Jacoby Brissett, because he's a backup quarterback at best, if they could get somebody to come in for 1 or 2 years that will stabilize the quarterback position, then I think Harrison's a good deal. Okay. If not, they better get one of these 3 kids that are the 3 quarterbacks in the position that they have.
You know, I'm more and more stuff is coming out about Caleb Williams, you know, projected to be the number 1 pick for the Bears.
Yeah.
I'm not sold on that guy.
Yeah, well,
I'm really not.
I don't know enough
the guy
about
I like Drake May from North Carolina, but is he a top 3 pick? I'm not sure. I'm not sure about that. You know, Penix comes with a great pedigree, but also injury history.
Yeah.
And Bo Nix, question mark. You know, great competitor.
I think of the 3 quarterbacks in Harrison. Harrison's by far the best athlete of that group.
No doubt.
But what the Patriots, I mean, you can't win without a quarterback. And if they think one of these 3 guys, and I don't know enough about any of them other than what I've seen, a future quarterback that can lead this team, then I would go with Harrison. Now, if there was a Garoppolo or somebody like that that can handle 2 years, there's always a quarterback that'll be coming up in the next one. They're in a rebuilding. They're not going to win. Yeah. They're not going to win next year like they did.
Well, no, but we don't know that, Al.
No, but
we don't know that because this is going to be a whole new offensive system, you know. And you have Alex Van Pelt, who's now coming in as an offensive coordinator. Everyone's going to have to learn from scratch.
Well, that's why I'm saying.
And I think the fans have to come in with no expectations about what they're going to be able to do or not do. But here's what they can do: is get a receiver that's a game changer, a guy who's going to go over the top.
Got to get it to him, though.
Well, you know what? I never saw anything wrong with Jacoby Brissett's arm when he was here.
He's an average quarterback at best.
Well, you know what? I'll take average. I'll take average right now.
Every team he's
as opposed to what we had, which was Mac Jones, who's now gone to Jacksonville.
That's the best thing that happened.
Correct.
Because
he was
him
damaged.
And Zappi are actually just throwaways. And, you know, it's a sin that he was the first round pick, 15 or 16. And whoever was the driving force, whether it was Belichick or whatever, behind that made a huge mistake. Set the team back 2-3 years.
Well, not only that, what set that kid back was their indecision on who to replace Josh Daniels at offensive coordinator.
Yeah, well,
that's what really set that kid back. That damaged his confidence.
He didn't have the arm, though. He
didn't have the arm. They didn't have the weapons around him. Right. He didn't have the offensive line in front of him.
I don't blame him 100%. What I say is, though, that he wasn't the guy.
At the end, I do blame him because your mechanics are your responsibility.
Right. I mean, he was doing things that I've never seen any quarterback do.
Or trying to force it, trying to make bad decisions, and he just did not.
More interceptions than touchdown passes.
but I mean, Al, there were interceptions that were like just inexplicable.
Stupid.
Like the last one he threw was, you know, into the end zone, underthrown, and it was just a bad pass. And everyone, I think that's the one that led to his demise.
Here's my thought on the Patriots, though. I mean, you got to hope. Hope is the biggest word here. Hope that the change will allow them to be a competitive. They weren't competitive for 2 years. A competitive team, whether they go 10-7, something like that.
Well, Al, their defense made them competitive.
Right.
Their defense was what made them competitive. Their offense did not. Their offense put them in a hole. And if they can fortify certain aspects of their offense, and they went out and got a running back, Antonio Gibson.
Yeah, he's a good player.
I don't know, what does that mean for, you know, Ezekiel Elliott, who I really love?
I think Ezekiel Elliott is probably going to be the one out because Ramonde is their guy.
And Ezekiel Elliott is a high-priced solution, and I don't know.
He's 29 years old. I think he's still a valuable player, and I think he might stay with the team. It depends. Mayo's going to have his idea of who is good and who isn't good and who could be better than under Belichick's style. So we'll see.
But there's a lot of movement yesterday, the day before that, in the league with running backs. The big news, Saquon Barkley leaving the Giants to go to the Eagles. Derrick Henry going to the Ravens. Unbelievable.
Yeah.
And then you have Josh Jacobs going to the Packers. Leaving the Raiders. But Al, maybe it might not be fair to ask you this, but what in your estimation right now was the biggest gain or loss by a team in free agency so far? And I got an idea for a team.
Well, I look at the Eagles, okay, and I say they were a team that 2 years ago won.
Yeah.
And could have won last year. I mean, could have. I think they've improved. They're up there. Kansas City, to me, is. I mean, when you watch that game, that Super Bowl game,
Right.
the only thing that separated the two teams was him.
Yeah.
There's a classic example of a great quarterback.
Mahomes, yeah.
I mean, coming down the end, they got a kid who never played, young,
Yeah.
no legacy, up against the kid that's been there, done it,
And yet that kid walked off the field with a lead.
yeah.
And you could see the reaction of the guys, the 49ers on the bench. They're like going, oh, man, we're giving the ball back to Mahomes with like less than a minute and a half.
That's the sign of a great quarterback.
Yes.
Is a guy that everybody kept saying, like Brady.
Yes.
Brady was the guy that came in at the end. He never, ever panicked. And Mahomes is the same way. He never panics. He don't care how much. No, I mean, if they're down 28-0 with 2 minutes left, he'd panic.
Yeah.
But he doesn't.
Yeah.
And so I think there are a number of teams. This is what's interesting. I think the NFL has more parity now
Oh, yeah.
than it's had in a while.
Here's a team that was subtly weakened and another that was greatly strengthened by some moves. And the team that got weakened was in the AFC East. It was the Dolphins.
Yeah.
They lost Christian Wilkins to the Raiders.
Yeah.
And then they had another offensive lineman, Robert Hunt, leave. So now you got two guys who are core people on their offense and defensive line. And the team that got strengthened, I thought, were the Raiders.
Yeah.
That defensive line picked up Christian Wilkins. And consider this. You're adding him to a line that already has Max Crosby there. And I'll tell you, the guy who bemoaned that probably the loudest was Mahomes, because Mahomes hates to play the Raiders because of Max Crosby. Now he's going to hate to play them even more with Max Crosby and Christian Wilkins.
That fires up a kid like Mahomes. I don't think he's afraid of anything. I mean,
it does fire him up, but he hates.
Yeah.
He hates.
Yeah,
and you know
sure.
what? To me, that indicates that they get under his skin. They get under his skin.
Yeah.
So if you get under a guy's skin like that, and you're living rent-free in his head,
But you got a number of teams that 5 years ago nobody even talked about. One is Cleveland.
Yeah.
They've improved. Philadelphia is always one of these teams that everybody thinks is going to do this or do that, and whether they do or don't, they're there. You got the Raiders. You got Kansas City. I mean, you've got San Francisco. San Francisco's defense was as good.
But they lost Eric Armstead, which was a key guy. And then the other team I thought that was really greatly fortified was the Atlanta Falcons.
Yeah.
They've got the quarterback that they've always been looking for. Kirk Cousins, unbelievable how that guy always manages to land us. He got I think it's a 4-year, $180 million deal, 100 guaranteed. But look at the weapons around that guy. And they have a decent line. They have a good defense. They have an emerging star in Bijan Robinson, the running back out of Texas that they got last year.
The team,
Drake London, a big receiver.
I think the
Kyle
team
Pitts.
that you're not mentioning, though, and they picked up a kid that's from that town, is Jones and the Jaguars.
They were weakened.
He's from Jacksonville, so I mean, I'm just kidding.
Oh God, no.
You know what, though? this is a time of the season. I think if we can flip a little to like the Bruins.
Sure.
Guys like Ullman, who heard his name mentioned, I'm sure DeBrusk was a nervous wreck. I'm sure Grzelcyk was a nervous wreck. I'm sure Forbett was a nervous wreck.
Yeah.
When you think about it, you go to work and you play hard, and then all of a sudden somebody says, okay, this date you might not be here. It is difficult.
It's nerve-wracking.
It is difficult for guys that have their families here and everything.
Doing a hard pivot to the Bruins here. Do you think that may have at all impacted their performances, going into the trading deadline?
No. I'll tell you what I do think of with the Bruins, okay? The Bruins have some major issues, and I think Brickley talked about this the other day. I was watching the show, and he said they needed to fill some holes, major holes that they didn't do. And then they bring in guys. I think that adding Maroon was a good thing because he's a physical kid if he's healthy.
Right.
Okay, he said he's been out for a couple of months, but they claim he's ready to come back. They don't have grit, and this kid's a gritty type of player, so he's gonna help them in that regard.
Peak?
Maroon.
Maroon, yeah.
He'll help them there. Pete is, to me, the Bruins have Pasternak, Marchand, and McAvoy. Everybody else is a decent. I'm not saying they're not good players. They're decent players. But you can fill in a Coyle. You can fill in a Lindholm. You could fill in a Daka. Those guys don't win you Stanley Cups only.
But you need those guys.
You do. I'm not saying you don't.
They pull on the rope for you.
If you can get somebody like Peak, and instead of Grzelcyk, you're doing okay.
Yeah.
If you can get somebody like Thomas Hertel, who went to Vegas.
Unbelievable, Al. The rich get richer.
Well, I mean, to do that, the Bruins could give up Coyle. I still think that the biggest deal that they should have done, and
package Ullmark and DeBrusk.
I would take Ullmark, I'd take DeBrusk, and I'd take Lindholm and give them to the Edmonton Oilers for Leon Draisaitl. Oh, you're not going to get Connor McDavid, but you'll get Draisaitl, and we get a scorer to help Pasternak, and they get a defenseman. You get a forward to replace Draisaitl because you don't need scoring.
Yeah.
They get a goaltender that they absolutely need, and they get a real good defenseman in Lindholm.
Yeah.
Now, you could take Forbett and Grzelcyk instead if you could give those two up instead of Lindholm.
Keep Lindholm.
I'd like to keep Lindholm, but if you had to do it, that helps the Bruins and it helps Edmonton.
Are you looking at what Mason Lohrei has been giving you?
Yeah.
As a reason?
I'll tell you why. I think, well, you could either say, if you wanted to, Brandon Carlo could go in that trade and keep Lohrei because they're very similar.
And Lindholm.
Although Lohrei is a better offensive player than Brandon
I like the way he handles the puck, much like McAvoy.
But Carlo has been one of their consistently better defensemen this year.
Yeah.
I mean, McAvoy is the key.
Right.
Grzelcyk is hot and cold, and he's injured a lot.
Yeah.
So I look at them and I say, they never look like the best team on the ice any night except against Toronto. So what that tells me, though, is they get outworked. The other night, they've lost 4 games, I believe, at the Garden this year by like 5 goals. They've given up 5 goals.
At the end, and they've let go of the rope at the end.
Well, they've got, 14 games where they've gone into overtime and can't win. So I think they didn't address what they need.
Yeah.
And therefore, I hope they win. I'd love to see them go further. I just don't think they have the guns.
Well, one team that hasn't let go of the rope all season long, your Boston Celtics, Al. I'm telling you, this team is getting better and better as the season goes on. They've had their share of lumps, but they've dished out some.
Not many.
Oh my God, they've dished out some big time whoopings on the Golden State Warriors out.
I saw it.
Oh my God, by 50. They could have hung 100 on those guys at the first half.
Well, Curry couldn't hit anything.
No.
That's hard to see. Somebody go, it was 0 for 10 at one point. I don't know what he ended on 3-pointers. I mean, that's what the kid does. The thing with the Celtics, though, when you watch them, what makes them a great team is that it's not Jason Tatum. It's Jason Tatum, it's Brown, it's Derek White, it's Porzingis, it's Holiday.
And then off the bench, Horford, Peyton Pritchard.
Yeah.
You know.
They have a team.
Yeah.
And when you see
Luke Cornett.
Yeah, they've got it all right now, in my opinion. But if Porzingis goes out for any length of time in a playoff series, they still need a big man, and you know he has injury issues, and they watch it very carefully.
Well, they have 4 guys there right now. Porzingis, obviously, Horford, Cornett, and this other guy, Neemias Queta, who's not bad.
No, he's
Al,
not bad.
you know, I mean, I think he's got Robert Williams athleticism, but he's got Al Horford durability.
Yeah.
You know, and so you get a guy like that, you can, you know, inject him in certain points of the game. So I think that's going to be helpful. But they have a bench.
I don't believe there's anybody that can beat them if they stay healthy.
You know who else we're forgetting? Sam Hauser.
Yeah.
That guy, nothing but hustle and buckets from that guy.
I know.
Nothing but hustle and buckets.
What amazes me about Porzingis, though, is everybody talks about his shooting, but he's also pretty effective down low.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, he's a pretty decent player. I mean, better than I thought he was. And I think the team overall has gone back to the Red Auerbach thing of being a team.
Yes.
And that's the thing that makes
Big
them
time.
impossible.
And you know who I give credit to that? Joe Mazzulla.
Well, Mazzulla, I'll give Mazzulla credit for another thing. He brought in a staff around him that are savvy in terms of what basketball needs are, and he listens.
And you know who's there at the background as a sounding board for him? Jeff Van Gundy. You think about that. He's got Brad Stevens there. Yeah. He's got guys that, okay, they've been there, they've done it, and you know they have playoff experience, and he has it too.
See, I'm a firm.
But now they know how to navigate the playoffs a little bit, how to keep your guys fresh, how to, you know, you're getting to the point now. They've got 51 wins out, and they're like tightening the noose around everyone else in the East for the number 1 seed and the number 1 overall. You know, so that's going to be a huge component to have, you know, when you get down to the playoffs. You know, but at the same time, Al, what I love is that your stars are not necessarily playing like they have to be stars. They're engaging everybody. They're bringing everybody with them.
That's the key. I mean,
that's
you see a kid like a kid like Brown. I mean, Brown sometimes can not show up as much as Jason Tatum's pretty much the same every night. Brown sometimes, you know, he gets 27 points in the first half. And
you know what? Everyone sits there. They don't complain about it. Yeah. They just step aside and let him do his thing. The
interesting thing about Brown is if he scores 26 points in the first half, Tatum scores 26 in the second half. I mean, who do you cover?
Who do you pick your poison?
I mean, I think if they stay healthy, I think they're odds on to win it.
All right. So who in your estimation stands in their way in the East and out West in the NBA Finals?
Well,
because they're getting a steady diet of West teams right now.
Yeah. You know, San Francisco, I mean...
The Warriors, I don't know that they're making it.
I don't think they're going to make it, but, you know, they're a scary team because of the legacy part of their...
Yeah, but I think that went out the window when they got whooped by 50.
Yeah, you know what? I don't think there's anybody that can beat the Celtics.
Here's the teams that used to scare me in the East.
Philly?
Right? Philly and Miami.
Miami. Always Miami.
Now... you got to be worried about. Here's the teams you got to worry. The Wizards.
Yeah.
They're a team. They're a young team, and they run. And let me tell you, that was an eye opener for me when they struggled against the Wizards down there.
Yeah.
And then the other team you got to think about too is the Bucks. You know, they found a resurgence under Doc. That to me is shaping up more and more like your Eastern Conference final.
Yeah, their craw and their
and the other team
would be Miami though.
This team, to me, has replaced Miami, is the Knicks. The Knicks. They have become a team you got to be wary about, you know.
It's amazing.
Good coach. They have good coach. They have some good players. They have a good scheme. They changed up. They went out and got some interesting pieces, you know. So I just think that they're a team that, okay, I'm watching the Knicks a little bit. Keep with one eye on the Bucks. Everybody else, they're done.
The only reason I say Miami is Miami's got they're in here of the
Yeah,
Celtics.
but Derek and the guy that's that's living there is Jimmy Butler.
Yeah,
right?
Butler. I mean, Butler kills them all the time. You know what? There's nobody that compares to the Celtics night in and night out the way they play.
Right.
I mean, nobody.
Right.
So I think that they're going to be odds-on favorite to win. If they lose, it would be like the Bruins did last year.
Yeah.
I mean, the Bruins win 65 games. They were the most points ever, and they lose in the first round. Celtics won't lose in the first round. If they lose, they'd lose in the finals, in my opinion.
Yeah.
But, hey, they put together 5 starters, and forget the 6th, 7th, 8th, and 9th, because they're all good players, but they put 5 guys out there that when you look and they go, there's 5 all-stars.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, really, think about it. Every one of them is White's probably the most underrated of the 5.
Yeah.
But in my opinion, he comes up with the big shot when they need it.
Yes.
He did it last year, and he'll do it again.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how that happens, Al.
Well, in the 2 minutes that we got or so left, I mean, the Red Sox, that's all they need is 2 minutes because, they lose that kid, the pitcher, the 38, Giolito.
And they're still having to pay for Sale.
Huh?
So you got
Sale's pitching pretty well.
Why can't we get guys like that?
He's pitching pretty well. He worked hard, evidently, in the off season.
Yeah.
They're going to hit, I think.
I see Sale and Mac Jones being in the same boat.
Yeah,
They needed a change of scenery.
Sale's a little more tougher, though, than Mac Jones. Mac Jones really came with a hype that wasn't justified.
Right.
Sale, even as he first came to the Red Sox, was as good a pitcher, lefty, as we've had in years. But
I think he burnished his reputation a little bit. I don't know if he tainted it.
So at the end, I think all
at the front end he burnished it. At the back end he may have tainted it. Jury's still out on that team, man. I mean, it's like you sign Brian Bello, to a long-term contract.
You don't know.
And you don't know.
It's the same
thing. It's the same thing I feel. I felt the same way about that deal as I felt about when they did Devers.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay, you're committing a lot of money to that guy, and then you saw that he still had his, deficiency on defense.
I think they did the right thing with Bogarts, though, because Bogarts didn't have a great year last year.
But Al,
he had a good year. He's not a great shortstop. They're moving him to second base, incidentally.
Yeah. I mean, that's not bad. He could have been there too.
He didn't want to play second. He wanted to play short. He's not a shortstop.
Trevor Story here, and Trevor Story looking like he's going to have a year.
Let's hope so. I mean, they got the other kid O'Neill. I think that's.
But Al, it's like so many guys have come and gone, and I'm like sitting here going, these guys. There's so many guys who should have finished their careers in Red Sox uniforms. John Lester, Clemens, Mitch Moreland.
I'll tell you how bad it is. I got a call from a friend of mine that says pick some games for next year, and I didn't return the phone call.
Wow, that's bad. All righty, my man. Well, that's going to do it for us. Al, so glad to have you back from your Hawaiian sojourn. Everyone's missing you on our at Steel and Rye. They want to know when you're coming back tomorrow. We're going to be there?
Yeah.
Okay. All righty, I will too. That'll do it for us. And we shall see you next time here on Stepping Up to the Plate. Take care, everyone.